Welcome back to Learning the Witch's Tools. Today we are talking about the pentacle. So this is by far probably one of the most recognized symbols, and it fits for a number of groups. So typically the pentacle is going to be associated with a lot of pagans, not all, but a lot. Wiccans, really that typically you see that you're gonna think Wiccan, and a lot of witches. Again, not all, but a lot. So what does this little thing represent? So there's a few different ways to describe this. So the first is that a pentacle versus a pentagram. So the pentacle, the way I usually view this is that it is either a star with or without a circle. That's what makes it a pentagram or a pentacle. Some people argue pentagram is this direction and a pentagram is this direction. It kind of varies tradition to tradition. It's just whatever suits you. It doesn't really matter in the long term of anything because each tradition does things differently, so it's just whatever works for you. That said, what does this symbol represent? So this typically is going to represent the 5 elements. Now, what each point is represented as varies a little bit book to book, tradition to tradition. So keep that in mind. For myself, how I view it is we start off with air, fire, water, earth, and spirit. And then the circle around it is usually either representative of the magical circle that you work within or the combined force of all 5 of the elements working in balance. Now, there can be other meanings along with this, but typically that's the most common. Sometimes you can use it for the witch's pyramid, but not as often. I mean, I don't know, I guess it is there because then you have to will, to dare, to know, to keep silent, and to go, which I did talk about that recently, so if you aren't familiar with the witch's pyramid, I have videos talking about that. So there are a few different ways that you can use a pentacle. This typically, when you think of the tool, is the most common. It's going to be some type of disc. It's not terribly thick that you are going to use. Now, the other version is what I have on my hand, which is a ring or other form of jewelry. You can use them pretty similarly, but there are some limitations one way or the other. Now, before we get into the magical stuff, let's talk about a little bit more of the connections and associations for the pentacle. So while it is representative of all of the elements, it is typically put in the realm of earth because earth contains all of the elements we know. But you could also argue that it could be for spirit, which represents all of them combined as well. Typically, when you are casting your circle and setting up your altar space, this is going to go in the north, again to go with earth, or it will go in the center, which is a great place to have your spell workings, which is where this will come in handy quite a bit. Now, what do you actually use the pentacle for? The main use of the pentacle is for charging and or somewhat directing energy. Mostly it's for charging items. Now, the charging aspect of it is quite broad. This can be for charging a tool before you use it, for cleansing a tool before you use it. It can be for building up the energies of the 5 elements to go into your candle, your crystal, whatever. It can also be the place where the spell needs to take place on. You would put your candle on top of this, usually in some form of a holder. It can also be a central piece to like a crystal grid. A lot of times this is where you would have, again, essential for your spell. You might put crystals around it, candles around it, herbs on it, and basically this can heighten whatever your spell is that you're doing, so it can kind of vamp up whatever energies you're doing. Because of the circle, it can also help contain so that everything just stays right here. Of course, you would need to have relatively small tools for this particular one, but you can easily make your own by just like drawing it on a piece of paper or drawing it on wood or whatever. And you can also usually find bigger ones wherever witchcraft supplies are sold. Now for the worn version of these, so like mine, it's a little rough around the edges now, but whether it's worn as a ring or as a necklace or earrings or whatever, you can charge that for various purposes. Now, this could really apply to any sort of like magical jewelry if you wanted to, but for a lot of people, they will wear their pentacle as a form of representation for themselves or to honor their path. It could also be worn as like a sort of initiation process, like you've done your year in a day, you might get gifted a pentacle of some sorts as like, hey, you've done it. It can also be worn as protection, you're protected by all 5 elements. You could also charge it for whatever magical intent you're needing, so like if you need to do like a love spell, a protection spell, prosperity spell, whatever, you could charge it into the pentacle and then you're wearing it and it will keep you in balance with all 5 of the elements, which is another thing you could wear it for, is just to keep yourself in balance between all 5 elements. And of course, by no means is this the end-all list of what you could use a pentacle for. And like I said, rings, necklaces, earrings, those are usually the most common. Some people will get it tattooed and then it's a permanent fixture on your body and then you don't really have to like recharge it anymore. It's just kind of there. But a lot of us, we like to have the jewelry aspect of it. We can take it off, recharge it, cleanse it, whatever we need to do. You might end up getting multiple pieces of jewelry like myself, starting to kind of look like a pirate at this point. And each one would have a different purpose. But typically, this one, it's a really easy symbol to find. My first one I found at like a state fair here in Utah, so like you can find them pretty easily if you try. There's also plenty of gorgeous ones that you can find online. There's a lot of Etsy shops that have some gorgeous designs. Some witches will take it off and make it a sort of ritual to put it on every morning as sort of an affirmation to the craft every day. Others, like myself, you just leave it on indefinitely pretty much. The only time I will take mine off is more practicality, like when I take off my wedding ring, which is when I'm making like bread or something and I don't want dough stuck in my rings indefinitely. The very last association I put with the pentacle is just a reminder of the sacred circle. When I cast a circle, I do keep in mind the shape of a pentacle. So as I'm casting the circle, I usually try to make a point of having the elements where, we'll use our little handy dandy tool here. So I would make sure the like elemental altars basically would be in roughly this shape so that I could have the central one up here in whatever direction I'm needing to do the ritual in. So for example, if I'm doing a ritual to honor the ancestors, I would have the top point be facing west. If I'm welcoming back the sun, I might do it in the like south or in the east. It just kind of depends, or if you're wanting to do a love spell, you might do it in the south. If you're doing a healing spell, you might do it in the north. It just kind of depends, but I like to have it set up so that I always have somewhat of the shape when I go to cast circle versus like the crisscross version. I like that shape a little bit better. So anyways, I would love to hear your interpretations and what you use the pentacle for in your craft in the comments down below. Huge thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names here on the screen. If you'd like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.